Lesson 2.5, Literal Equations and Formulas. Literal equation is an equation that involves two or more variables. An example, 4x plus 2y equals 18. This is an equation because it has an equal sign and it has two variables in here, x and y. When you work with literal equations, you can use the methods you have learned in this chapter to isolate any particular variable. Formula is an equation that states a relationship among quantities. An example is the area of a rectangle. Area equals length times width. Problem 1. The equation 10x plus 5y equals 80, where x is the number of pizzas and y is the number of sandwiches. How many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? Well, first we have to figure out what variable we are trying to isolate. Okay, so sandwiches is represented by the letter y. Okay? It's asking for how many sandwiches, and up here it said y is the number of sandwiches. So in step 1, we are going to isolate or solve the equation 10x plus 5y for y. It's going to look a little weird at first, but it will make sense in a little bit. So pretend like the 10 wasn't there in front of the x. How would you solve for y? You would subtract 10x from each side. Now 80 and 10x are not like terms, so therefore you just write it out as 5y equals 80 minus 10x right here. The only thing that canceled out was 10x minus 10x. How do you get rid of the coefficient in front of y? Right now this is multiplication. Inverse operations, you're going to divide all terms by the coefficient of y, which is 5. And when you simplify, 80 divided by 5 is 16, 10x divided by 5 is 2x, so y equals 16 minus 2x. Now we've isolated the variable y, but now the question was, how many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? Pizzas is represented by the letter x. So we know that x is equal to 3. So we can substitute, use the rewritten equation to find y when x is equal to 3. So we can just evaluate this equation for x is equal to 3, just like you did in earlier lessons. So you substitute x equals to 3, y equals 16 minus 2 times 3. Order of operations, multiplication first. 16 minus 6 is 10. So y equals 10. Always go back and answer the question. The question is, how many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? Well, here's a simple statement. If you buy 3 pizzas, you can buy 10 sandwiches. When you rewrite literal equations, you may have to divide by a variable or variable expression. When you do this in this lesson, assume that the variable or variable expression is not equal to 0 because division by 0 is not defined. So problem 2, what equation do you get when you solve ax minus bx equals c for x? So in this problem, I made a mistake here. I rewrote it wrong. This is supposed to say bx. Okay? Ax and bx have a common variable here. It's x. So if you divide both ax and bx by x, you factor it out, which we'll talk about this later. X times a minus b equals c. That's what this simplifies to. Now we're solving for x, so x is being multiplied by the entire quantity of a minus b. So we can divide both sides by a minus b to isolate the variable x. And when you do that, you get the equation x equals c over a minus b. Formulas are special types of literal equations. Some common formulas are given below. Notice that some of the formulas use the same variables, but the definitions of the variables are different. This is a beautiful table that you are going to want to have somewhere and keep it safe. If you do not want to put this in your notes section, you can put this on a separate sheet of paper, for example, a loose leaf piece of paper, and keep it in your notebook because you will use this throughout the entire year. Problem 3. What is the radius of a circle with circumference 64 feet? Round to the nearest tenth and use 3.14 for pi. So step 1, we need to know the formula for circumference. Okay, circumference equals 2 pi r based off of the table we created before. So we want to isolate the variable r because we're looking for the radius. Okay, so we are solving for r. Right now r is being multiplied by 2 and pi, so we are going to divide each side by 2 pi. So therefore r is equal to c over 2 pi. Now we want to know what is the radius of a circle with circumference 64 feet. So that means c is 64, and it told us to use 3.14 for pi. So again, we can evaluate this equation for c equals 64 and pi equals 3.14. Plug those numbers in, and roughly the radius is going to be about 10.2. Okay, so let's look at a sample problem. This should be put in the back of your notes. So the number 1 says solve the equation for m, and then it wants to know what is the value of m when n is equal to -2. So first we have to isolate this equation for m. So right now it says 4 equals 2m minus 5n. So first I'm going to add 5n to both sides. And we cannot add 4 and 5n because they are not like terms, so we're just going to write those terms out. 4 plus 5n equals 2 times m. Then we're going to divide all three terms by 2. So we get m is equal to 4 divided by 2 is 2. 5 over 2n, we can just leave it as 5 over 2n. That's the first part. Solve the equation for m. Check. Now they want to know what is the value of m when n is equal to -2. So now we can rewrite the equation by substituting n equals -2 right there. So m equals 2 plus 5 over 2 times, it says -2, I'm going to write -2 as a fraction, -2 over 1. I know that 2 goes into 2 itself one time, 2 goes into -2 one time. So m is equal to 2. Positive 5 times -1 is -5. And 2 minus 5 is -3. That would be your answer. Number 2, what is the height of a triangle that has an area of 24 inches squared and a base with a length of 8 inches? So it's talking about what is the height of a triangle with area. So we could go back and figure out that the area, or look at the formula, area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 times the base times the height. Okay, we're looking for the height here. So the first thing we want to do is rewrite this equation so that it says h equals. Okay, so first thing I would do is get rid of this fraction of 1 over 2 by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal. And 2 times a is just 2a. b times h. Divide both sides by b. So h is equal to 2 times the area divided by the base. It's the first part. They want to know what is the height when the area is 24 and the base is 8 inches. So now we can substitute those values into this equation. So h equals 2 times the area, which is 24, divided by the base, which is 8. So h is going to equal 2 times 24 is 48, divided by 8 is 6. Now, one last thing, it's not just 6. What is the units? Inches, so 6 inches. When you're given a word problem, always look for units. We'll talk more about that tomorrow.